Sina Movahed kicks off this titled Tuesday clash with e4. Joaquin Fiorito replies with e5. Knight f3, knight c6, and d4. Just like that, we are in the Scotch game. Imbalance from move 3. Look, black has a couple of ways to respond here. The main line goes pawn takes on d4, but you'll often see the solid knight to f6. Fiorito plays the absolute best move, pawn takes on d4. Now white has to recapture. Obviously, knight takes on d4 is played almost every time, but white could also try the tricky bishop to c4, entering the wild Scotch gambit. Sina plays knight takes on d4. We have a standard Scotch position on the board now. Black usually develops with bishop to c5 to immediately challenge the center again, or the flexible knight to f6. Queen to f6. He's avoiding the main line. Fiorito wants a fight, not a textbook. He brings the queen out incredibly early to attack the knight on d4 and ask white a serious question. A very popular response here is knight to b3 or knight takes on c6. Knight to e2. Look, this looks passive, but it's actually incredibly solid. Sina defends the center without trading knights and fixing black's pawn structure. Black is already setting up for a tactical storm, and this isn't going to be quiet. Bishop to c5 puts the piece on an active diagonal, pointing right at the center, eyeing a sneaky piece offer on f2 that would completely blow up white's king. Sina hops the knight into f4, centralizing the piece, eyeing the critical g6 square, and neatly shutting down any funny business against f2. Knight to e7 neatly brings out another minor piece. Out comes the knight to c3 to reinforce the middle of the board. Joaquin castles to tuck the king safely away. It looks perfectly fine now. But tucking the king on that side of the board is going to become a massive problem very, very soon. Bishop to e2 prepares to bring the king to safety while keeping the tension perfectly balanced. The knight bounces to g6 to attack the knight, offering a trade to neutralize white's grip. Knight to d5. We are officially in the middle game. The horse lands squarely in the center, putting a massive squeeze on black's entire position and staring right at the queen. Queen retreats to d8. We call this the walk of shame. The Depression royalty shuffles all the way back to her starting square, doing absolutely nothing but taking up space. But it had to be done to save the queen. Knight takes on g6. Sina cashes in the tension in the center, looking right at the rook. Pawn recaptures. Wait, look at this board right now. Joaquin takes back, but in doing so, opens up the h-file. That is a massive highway pointing straight at his own king, and white is about to buy a sports car. Sina hits the gas pedal with pawn to h4. White sees the open highway and prepares to bring this pawn up as a battering ram. The knight leaps into d4. Black tries to stir up some counterplay in the center while the storm gathers on the flank. Bishop to g5 is pure intimidation. The piece directly attacks the queen, forcing an incredibly uncomfortable decision. Catastrophe strikes with pawn to f6. Joaquin pushes the pawn to block the threat on his queen, but completely shatters the shield in front of his own king. You just do not create these kinds of permanent weaknesses for free. Let's look at a better variation. Better would have been sliding the queen to e8, escaping danger. White would deliver a check on e7, and the bishop would just capture it. This would look much better. Okay, now let's get back to the game. What an absolute genius idea from Sina! The bishop drops to c4, completely ignoring the hanging piece, to line up a filthy, discovered check right down the diagonal. The threat of a devastating piece offer on f6 is hovering. This is the exact kind of vision that separates intermediate players from masters. Knight to e6 blocks the laser beam. Black throws a piece in the way to survive the immediate crisis. A massive letdown as the bishop retreats to f4. White had a foot on the throat and completely blinks. I think it was better to push the pawn to h5. Instead, Sina saves the piece rather than pushing the attack. Pawn to c6. Joaquin kicks the centralized knight, desperately gasping for air. Now wait, you are definitely wondering, why didn't black just take that tempting bishop on f4? Well, if they had taken that trade, the knight from d5 would just recapture and completely dominate the center of the board. And that's exactly why they had to play pawn to c6 instead. Sina pushes the h-pawn anyway! White completely ignores the hanging horse in the center to get the battering ram rolling again. Honestly, I think it was better to jump the knight to c7, but the pressure is boiling over. 62 seconds. You stared at this board, considered your life choices, and chose to grab the knight on d5. This is greedy, blind, and completely suicidal. I think it was better to push the pawn to g5. When your opponent is throwing pawns at your king, you do not go grocery shopping for free pieces. Sina smashes the pawn into g6. The defenses are completely obliterated. That open file is now a weapon of mass destruction. Joaquin completely ignores the flashing red lights and greedily snatches the bishop on c4. I think it was better to slide the rook to e8. You cannot keep taking pieces while the Grim Reaper is knocking. Rook to h8 check! Game over. Unstoppable mate on the open file. Good night. And right here, black threw in the towel and resigned. But before I show you the crushing finish, can you find the forced mate in 2 for white? Pause the video, take your time, I'll wait. Let me show you exactly why they had to resign in this spot. The king takes on h8. The queen slides to h5 with check. The king retreats to g8. Queen to h7. There is absolutely no escape from this inevitable checkmate. What an absolute bloodbath. The lesson from Sina Movahed here? King safety is not a joke, and an open rook file is a weapon of mass destruction. Drop a comment below. Did you spot that brilliant bishop retreat before it happened? Subscribe right now, because there are plenty more beautiful chess destruction videos on the way.